Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, let's start this Bava Kamadaf Sadi Hey. We're going to begin on Sadi Hey with Aleph by the two dots, about 8 lines from the top. So we learned that if Guzzle Para, a person would have stolen a cow, which was Muberes, which was pregnant at the time, the Yolda B'chul, and then it gave birth. So, as the Mishnah says on Sadi Gimel and Beis, if it gave birth by the ganav, or for that matter, a sheep which had a lot of wool, so you have to pay back the value of a cow which was ready to give birth, or the value of a sheep that was ready to be, its wool was ready to be shorn. However, if let's say you stole a cow and it became pregnant by the ganav, in other words, it was not pregnant, but in the hands of the ganav it became pregnant, or the sheep grew wool in the hands of the ganav, then we're Misham Kashas Hagzela, the way it was. Okay. So, Tanraban. So the Gemara says as follows. Hagoizel Rachel, a person stole this sheep, the Gazza, and then he sheared it. Or, Para, he stole a cow, the Yolda, and it gave birth. Mishalom Osa, Ves Gizaiseha, Ves Vladaiseha, Derameir. You need to pay for it. You need to pay for its shearings and for the offspring, which is mashma, even if it went up in value. Divra Meir. So that is the din. Says Rashi, Mishalom oisav es gizoiseha kol ma shenatal mimenu. Whatever you took, you have to pay back. Rabbi Yehuda Omer gazela chazeres beineha. The gazela, just give back the way it is. Says Rashi, Kamoshahi achshav reikonis. Give it as an empty sheep without wool, or an animal without its offspring. Yachzerena, give it back the way it is. V'hada mishom demei gizois v'uber kamoshahi b'shas gazela. And then you have to figure out the value of the wool, or while the animal's pregnant, at the time that you stole it. And here's the key, Rashi says, Vo shvach hagiza shishbicha etzlo. Not if it went up in value, this wool. Vo shvach vlad. Not the value if the vlad went up. Doi kanis Rabbi Yehuda. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, he holds that we're not going to kanas him. So therefore, if it went up in value, we're not going to kanas the ganav. Avodamim the value at the time that you stole, even though it went up in value, the din is you don't have to pay for its increase of value, because that would be a kanas to the ganav, but rather how much it was at the time of the stealing. No one says that you're going to end up paying basically less. So the question is, do you pay Shasek Zela? And therefore, even though it went up in value, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we're not going to kanas the gazlan. Or, according to Rameir, he holds that you have to pay it, even if it went up in value. So that's the two sheets so far. Rav Shimon, back in the Mishnah, in the Gemara says, Rav Shimon Omer, Royin Oisai, we evaluate and look at Ki'ilu hi shuma etzloi b'kesef. It was evaluated with money, says Rashi, Mishasek Zela. So at the time that it was stolen, Mishalom damim kashasek zela. Coming first, Rabbi Yehuda Shimon. It sounds a lot like the second sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, that you just have to pay kashasek zela, even if it went up in value. So that we're gonna have to understand the difference between the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. So for the Gemara, Iboilhu, my time to Rameir. Why does Rameir hold that even if it went up in value, we're going to knas the ganav? Mishum ksaver shinim b'kom oimed. Is it because he holds Shina bim koine oimed? Even though it's a shinoi, we say that the ganav is not koine it, and therefore, since it went up in value, it's like it went up in value in the hands of the nigzel, even though the gazlan has it, and therefore he has to give back also the improvements, because it really belongs entirely to the nigzel. Oh, dilma be'al mashini koine. Really, the ganav should be koine it, and therefore he should only have to pay back shasek zela. And all we're doing is we're going to kanas the ganav. Says Rashi, Shloihi chayte nizker Why should we let the Goslin, because he is gained, why should he make money off of this? He's going to give back the item only, and then he's still going to profit. So we don't want him to profit. So it could be because it's kanas. So what's the difference? The sheet still stands. Rameir still says that if it goes up in value, then it goes to the nigzel. So l'may nafgamina l'hecha dechochsha michash. What happens? It went down in value. Says Rashi, l'hecha do hishpicha el kasha. What if actually in the hands of the Goslin it didn't go up in value, but went down in value? That it belongs to the nigzel, then chashanami hader k'di isa hashta. So you can give it to him now also, less than how much it was worth at the time when he stole it. V'itam mishum kanasahu v'shinu ikani mishum demikara shini mishum mikara. So if in fact shini is kaina, so then why would we say in that situation it's not a kanas? Right? So the fact that it went down in value, the fact that you're giving it, you're not, the ganav is not the chayti nisker. So Toshima. So how do we understand the Shita Rameir? So it says like this. Gozel behema, let's say you stole an animal, his kina, and it got older, which is mashma, it got worse, which is hopefully going to answer our question. Or for that matter, you stole avadim, you stole slaves, v'his kinu, and they got older. So again, as Rashi says, "Dishtani legur yusam hanukchasha," it got worse. So misham kshas gzela, you have to pay at the time of the gazela because you're cutting it; it's yours. So therefore, even though it went down, so the reality is you can just give it. You have to give it at the more expensive price when you stole it. And here's the shita Rameir. Rameir oimer bavadim oimer harshal chavanecha. When it comes to an eved, you can say harshal chavanecha. And says Rashi, because the avdikim karkai dami, the karka hadra be'ena, because like karka is not really something you can steal. Karka is an exelas. Come on, Sukkah, third parak talks about this. So the notion is, so too when it comes to an eved. Of course, you can physically steal an eved, but it has the din is an eved has, according to certain shitas, as the sheet has the same status of land, and therefore you could always return the eved. Just like you can always return land. You can say harshal fanecha. So according to Rameir, that's only by an eved. However, when it comes to a behema, since it went down in value, so he holds that no, you don't say harshal fanecha, but rather you have to pay kashas exela, which is mashma that really you are koine, and it's because of kanas. Then it should be the same din by an animal. And therefore you should be able to say harshal fanecha. Ella lav, shema mino, it's a raya, the ksavar ameir, shini kaina. They're really, the ganim is kainit, v'halcha kanasahu de kakanis. The only time that he has to give it b'shas ha'gazela is because it's a kanas. Because we don't want him to if it got better, we don't want him to, if it got better, so then he has to give it back the way it is, at a more expensive price. However, if it went down in value, we require him to do kashas exela because it went down in value. So we see clearly a raya that the whole din is because of kanas, but in this situation, he's kaina the object, and therefore he has to pay kashas exela. So I'm Rameir l'devrayim the Rabban Karmelu. No, this is not a raya. Rameir maybe is only trying to explain the shita of the Rabbanan. This has nothing to do with Rameir. Maybe Rameir holds like this. According to me, Rameir shinu ein kaina. You have to be nami. When it comes to an animal, even by an animal, you can say harshal fanecha. You can always give it the way it is. If it goes up or goes down, it doesn't make any difference because it's not mine. It's not the ganavs. It's the nigzel. So if it went up or down, it went up or down, so to speak, in the hands of the nigzel, and therefore that's the reason. According to you, the Rabbanan, the Armiso shinu kaina, that shin is kaina, and therefore it's shas exela. But oideli mias, maybe you should at least agree. But abdikam karkoi dami v'karka in nigzelas. And since that's the case, the din is you can give it back. You should be able to give the eved back the way it is, the way he is right now. The Rabbanan lo abdikam kimataltuli dami. Then eved actually has a status like metaltlin, and therefore because of that we don't make a distinct. We don't say that. And therefore, according to the Rabbanan, they'll say that you're koine it. You are koine, and therefore the din is it's shasa gazela. Okay. So this doesn't really answer our question, but let's look at question 13. Ketzan Yushavim Dibra Meir Dolahalon Im Tzvirli Shine Koina. Hagoizel Rachel Begazim Mishal Moisav Yes Gazed Dibra Meir. Rameir Omer Bavanim Shestkino Emel Harshal Fanecha. So by Rameir, is it because it's kanas? It's a kanas. Shelo Hayachayt Nisker Litul Sashevach. Why, if the animal goes up in value, should we allow him to be able to take it and just give it back Kushas Gzeil, and therefore he gets the profits? No, he has to give it back the way it is and not get any profit. But when it comes to the second case, we said Avda Koi Dami Vikarka in Nigzelis Liknois Legazlan. The Gazlan can't be kinda Bishinoi Vliyos Bershusai. So that's the distinction. Tashma. So let's say a person was to dye the wool red, dyed it black and red. So he has to be given the value of the wool, because I was given the wool to do this task. I did the wrong task. So now I have to pay you back the value of the wool that you gave me to dye. So it's mashma, even if it went up in value, the Ganav can basically just say he was like koinit. It's almost like he's koinit, if you will, as a Geneva, and therefore he's able to, because he did the wrong thing. It's not exactly the same thing as stealing it, but this is what it's talking about. You have a case of a Gazlan who takes it and he dyes it. So in that situation, maybe. So maybe I'm saying too much. So, but just push it. We see that it went up in value. So why, if it goes up in value, do we allow him to be able to keep the profits, right? If Shin is not koina, that it really belongs to the original owner of the wool, then he should have to give back the value of its profits. So over here it's a kanas, and therefore that's the reason why. And if you look at Rashi, but masnisin would sever the lav gazlan who, v'lav chayti who loikanis the hasha. Okay, so again that's one interpretation. So it's not necessarily chayti nisker in this situation, but perhaps we can still learn out from here that again this person did the wrong thing. Therefore, because of that, maybe why should he be able to keep the profits? So the fact that he's able to keep it, it shows. The only reason why he has to, Rameir says, when it goes up in value is really he's kind it technically. We don't want him to we kanas him. So therefore he has to give it back completely the way it is, even if it's profitable. But when down in value, we do not say that. We would maybe not say that, but that's not true, because Rameir holds that shinus kaina. And therefore, since Shin is kaina, so therefore the Ganav acquires it. Therefore, he acquires it, and therefore, even though it went down, it's like his now. Therefore, he has to pay Kshas Exel, which is in the higher amount. Okay, Shemamina. So Ikadi Amri, some say Had Holy Boiluch, Holy Boilan, Meda'apech Rav Tani Gazal Para. Since he mentioned the case of you stole a cow, focus on the case of a cow, his kina got old. Avadim hiskinu, Misham Kshas Exel. Dear Rameir. So Rameir says, when it comes to the case of a cow, you pay Kshas Exel. So when it comes to an Evan, again, you can say Harshal Fanecha, just like Karka. So Vadu Rameir Shinu Kaina. Since he says it's Kshas Exela, it must be a clear proof that Rameir holds that Shinus Kaina. Bahacha Kanasahu de Kakanisle. Over here, we kanas him because he stole. Kika boil and hachi. This is the question. Kika kanis b'mezid. Maybe the only time we kanas is only when it comes to he did something b'mezid. Alba b'shaygig lo kanis. Not b'shayg, says Rashi Kagoin. L'kech shalokach megazlan. A buyer who purchased something from a thief. Vishvicha, and it went up in value. V'lo yadashi gazula. He didn't know that it was stolen. So that's considered like b'shaygig. He didn't know. He's not the one who actually stole. So maybe when it comes to din b'shaygig, we're not going to kanas, and therefore if it goes up in the lokach's rishus, then he should be able to benefit from it. Dilma feel b'shaygig nami kanas. So tashma chamisha. When it comes to 5, Goyvin min ha-michayrin, you can collect only from free unencumbered properties, which are called nechasim michayrin, not from nechasim mishubadim, not from properties which have liens on them. Ve'elohein, you cannot collect peros from nechasim mishubadim, or shvach peros. Says Rashi, it's brought down Masechtas Gittin, ein moitziin, that you cannot collect a malva, a lender cannot collect lachilos peros or shvach karkais when nechasim mishubadim and they tikkun oilam, because if tikkun oilam they can't collect the fruits, because it's a hesel kuchais. The fact that fruits grew on the tree on these different properties or the improvements, so he cannot collect from the nechasim mishubadim if this land was sold to someone else, because the lekech, how is he supposed to have known? And he was not. Now he may never want to make any improvements because he doesn't know if someone tomorrow is going to come and take away all his fruits. So therefore, when it comes to the nechasim mishubadim, the malva cannot collect from the peros of land. Again, it's not the land that belongs to the loiva. The loiva sold this land, but there was a shibud on this land because there was a prior loan before the sale. But nonetheless, since this, but the peros itself not. Number 3 is the makabel of lozain ben ishtoi, ubasti ishtoi, someone who accepts upon himself to give mazonos to his wife's son or his wife's daughter. Since this is not clear how much this amount of mazonos is, it's a davar shenu kotzuv, and something which is not clear, then cannot collect, because you want to at least know the parameters of what can I potentially lose out. V'get choiv she'ein bo achrayus. So we're going to be focusing on that. A get choiv means a shtar choiv. It doesn't mean an actual divorce document. It means that there is a get choiv she'ein bo achrayus, which means like this. I have a document in which there is no achrayus. So therefore, if someone takes away your land, so then I'm not responsible to reimburse you. Now you cannot collect from the nechasim mishubadim if there's no achrayus. Says Rashi, shul shibud bo yuloiva b'shas halvas nechasav l'kasav l'kol nechasa achrayin l'chlefroim milvazeh. Whether that works at all, because that's again maybe achrayus is tais sefer who. So we'll see that in a second. And finally, ksuvas isha. She'ein bo achrayus, also when it comes to ksuvas isha. Now, man shaman l'ledi yamar achrayus lav tais sefer who Rameir. So what does it mean, lav tais sefer? That it's shayich that such a document actually is true, that you do not, that you can have a document which says there's no achrayus, that there's no responsibility connected to it. Or do we say it's obvious that whenever there's a loan, so in the event that that person can't pay the loan, you can always collect from them. But if you hold that that achrayus is not a tais sefer, it means that you're allowed to actually have that stipulation in the contract, and it's true. It wasn't a mistake that it was omitted; it was deliberate, and therefore, in that case, we say we don't collect from the nechasim mishubadim because we don't. Because the other logic is no one would ever lend money in the event that they're not able to potentially collect from the lova in this way, and that just the sofer made a mistake. No, we say that's not true. That actually, according to this, that nechasim, achrayus is lav tais seferhu, and therefore for that reason it is shayich that a person could have written such a thing and made that stipulation. So in that case, you do not collect from nechasim mishubadim. Okay, so that's one part. V'katani peros u'shvach peros, and it says that you cannot collect from nechasim mishubadim not fruits or shvach peros. So again, we know this has to be a Rameir, because Rameir is of the opinion, as we see elsewhere, as Rashi brings down, that he holds that achrayus is lav tais sefer. So therefore, this whole case of these 5 must be a Rameir, and therefore now we have to fit all the other 5 like Rameir. So it says peros and shvach peros. There is no cannot collect from the nechasim mishubadim. Now, what exactly does that mean, shvach peros? Hechinami kigayin shegozel sad mechavero. You stole a field from your friend, umarcho la'acher, and you sold it to someone else. Now, this person who bought it doesn't necessarily know that it was stolen. So this whole transaction was all b'shoigeg. Vishpicha, and this loikeach who thinks he's the rightful owner He bought it from a correct seller and made improvements on the field. So in this situation, technically, because it's not his, he can lose his land. However, kishu goiva, when you collect the nigzel, because again, this was all stolen from him, but there were profits, improvements, as we continue to study him in Bays. Goivas a karen menachasim mishubadim. You can actually collect the object, the principle, from nechasim mishubadim. However, as a shavach, the peros menachasim nicharin only. The asabal ara, because the original owner can come, the shakal are, and take the land, ushvache, and its profits. So my love, bam haaretz. We must be talking about. We want to establish this case b'shoigeg to try to answer the question: what is the din? Do we kanas also shoigeg or only b'mezid? Now this is a case where again it improved, and the question is, who is this loikeach? So maybe this loikeach is an am haaretz. What does it mean as an am haaretz? The loyada de kartnik zealous. He doesn't know that land potentially could be stolen. Oh, enunik zealous. He doesn't understand all these laws. So he's completely b'shogeg when he bought this land. V'afil hachi kasi bal karka. Nonetheless, the owner of the original land can come. The shakil ara, the shavcha. He can take the land and its profits. Shema mina b'shogeg kanis. So we see taka raya that we can ask even the loikeach, even though he was an amaris, he didn't know better. So amri lo, loikeach talmud chacham, the yoida. I wouldn't want to call him a talmud chacham, right? He bought it from the Ganav b'mezid, and therefore that's the reason why we're going to kanas the loikeach, not because he was b'shoigeg, which would answer our question. No, we're talking about a case where it was b'mezid, and therefore it's not a raya. So just like if a Goslin b'mezid steals and it goes up in value, we kanas him and say that he has to give back the whole thing, even if he was koined. So too when it comes to loikeach, only if it was b'mezid. Okay. Tashma. Let's keep bringing this case. Let's spoil about adaim mitzvah shachar, shachar mitzvah adaim. So it's supposed to be dyed red, and you dyed it black or red. So the din is, the person who made this incorrect dyeing, he keeps the wool. All he has to do is give back the value of the wool in which was given to him. Demate summer in, demate summer shvachalo, not the improvements. If again, let's assume this guy did this b'shoigeg, right? So if in fact we can ask him, so demate summer shvachu boilu meisale. You should also have to pay back the improvements. Therefore, Taka, this is the raya that we will only do this when it comes to the Ganev who stole, and therefore it was done b'mezid. However, not when it comes to b'shoigeg. Okay, let's look at question TB24. Ha'im rameir de kanis es agazlin shal yitol b'shvach kanas kainis af b'shoigeg umehechin raya. So, are we going to actually hold that we're going to kanas the loikeach as well, TB24, or is it only the gazlan? So we see this clearly that Rameir holds that we're only going to kanas b'mezid, but not b'shoigeg, because if you took the wool, you only have to give back the demate semer and not the shavach. Let's see what I wrote. L'gabi tzava im hatzoyvet tzava satsemer shloi kahoygin shachar o adaim hutzarach l'shal marakas as the demate demay. I wrote seva should be demay samroi. Demate semer, not seva. V'loi es hashavach oz in kanas b'shoigeg shma mina. Okay, so I basically got it right. Hopefully, I didn't mark that wrong because that little typo, we'll call it. Okay. Weiter. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Gezela Chayzeres Be'eneha. So Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, that was all Rameir. So let's make sure we understand this. So it's a three-way machlokas. So we started off with, which a person who stole a sheep and he shore the wool, stole a cow, and he gave birth. So according to Rav Meir, even though it went up in value, and maybe again, we're saying that according to Rav Meir, you actually are koine it because there was a change, but nonetheless we knas you because ein chayt nisker. Rabbi Yehuda says that the gzeil just just give it back the way that it was. Basically means kashas and gzeil, which is similar to Rav Shimon. So now let's see the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda oimer gzeil chazes now. Rav Shimon oimer reno isakil he shuma etzlei bekesef. So my benayu l'chayra, they both seem to be saying the same thing. So Rav Zvid b'shvach al gabi gzeil k'mefagi. We're talking about improvements in the hands of the Gazlan. What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda savar the nigzel havi. According to Rabbi Yehuda, since the Gazlan was kinda it, so therefore we say that the shvach shal gabi gazela belongs to goes to the nigzel. Look at Rashi. Kagain shishbich etzlei. Since it was a stolen item, it improved. We didn't take it. Kagain reikonis this abra or tuuna giza. Let's say you stole it with no wool or not pregnant, and then afterwards it grew. Let's say it grew wool. So according to the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, he says that improvement goes to the nigzel. Says Rashi v'halchakam Rabbi Yehuda. Gazela chayizeres beineha. The gazela itself goes back the way it was. Labala bein l'shvach bein l'girusa. Kamoshi hi b'shas tvia b'beistin hi chayizeres. So therefore, interestingly enough, he holds it doesn't matter if it goes up or down in value. It's always the nigzels. It just goes back the way it is right now. Now Shimon suffered the Gazlan Havi. Since the Gazlan was kainit, now Shimon says, no, what are you talking about? If it goes up or down in value, that improvement or lack thereof goes to the Gazlan. So that's a huge nafkamina, right? We're talking whether or not the Gazlan is kainit, and therefore he only has to give kashas gzela, or according to the Shita of Yehuda, he says it always belongs to the nigzel. It doesn't make any difference, and therefore, if it goes up or down, bein l'shvach, bein l'girusa, that you have to give it back. Now Shimon suffered the Gazlan habi. Now Papa Imnon the kuli alma shvach shal gabi gazela the Gazlan habi. Certainly, it should go to the Gazlan because the Gazlan is kainid. So then, what's the machok? Because v'hacha v'mechsel shlish reviya k'mifagi. What is that? A half or a third or a fourth. So this is like the din of a sharecropper. Says Rashi, Kederech minhag hamadina l'mekabli behemois lashbichan l'zman gadol kazeh. That you're holding on to it for a long period of time. Rabbi Yehuda savar shvach shal gabi gazela kuli de Gazlan havi. Shimon savar l'mexel l'shush ravia hu de shakel Gazlan. He only can get a certain amount. Not that it all goes to the Gazlan, but it's like split, like a sharecropper, half, third, or fourth. Tanan. Gazel parim nisabra at Sloi Yolda. Let's say he stole a cow, and it got pregnant in the hands of the Gazlan. So improvements took place in the hands of the Gazlan. Rachel, you stole a sheep, and then v'nit'ana etzloi, and it grew a lot of wool in the hands of the Ganav. The gazza, and then you sheared off all the wool. So Misham Kashas Gzela. All you need to do is give it at the time of the Gzela, which was an animal with no wool, and you got to keep the wool. Yolda in lo Yolda Hadar Be'ena. If let's say it gave birth, yes. If it didn't give birth, then return it with the child. The Bishlam aroused vid Yamar Shvach Shal Gabi Gzela the Nigzel Havi. I can understand, according to Rav Zvid, the first nafkamina, we said there's two nafkaminas. So, according to the sheet of Rav Zvid, he says the whole machlokus is basically, is the nigzel, is the Gazlan kaina. So, he holds shvach shal gabi gzela, the nigzel havi, that it still belongs to the nigzel, and therefore, we always give it back, no matter what. Rabbi Yehuda ha-money, Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda, who's Rabbi Yehuda like? Rabbi Yehuda. So it says, in this case, that if you have, according in this case, Rabbi Yehuda holds Shevach shal gabi gzela kuli de gazlan havi. So therefore, that's what it is. It goes to the gazlan. So therefore, if it was with a child, you give it back the way it is. El rapap and the gazlan havi, that everyone holds it really the gazlan is kainet hamani or Rabbi Yehuda or Rav Shimon. Who's this like? So rapapa who didn't feel lo yol denami kashas gzela de mishalim. Even if it didn't give birth, you only have to return it kashas and gazela because you, the gazlan, are always kaina, and therefore it's kashas and gazela to mishalim. But tani yolda, why say it gave birth? I didn't know that's the variation yolda. That's the same for the yolda. So it just mentions that case, but it's not raya. It's just the flow of the language of this brisa. Tani goes to Rav Papa. So we have a brisa which is going to support the shita of Rav Papa, that says that really everyone holds that Shvach Shal Gabi Gazela goes to the Gazlan because the Gazlan's kaina. The whole question is, does he keep the whole thing or just split it? Rabbi Shimon Oimer, Renos Kil, he Shuma Etzlo Mekesef. And it says Beferish, Umeslo Shashravia. So that's obviously a raya, like what he says, because that's precisely what he says according to Shita. Ravashi, Ki Avin be Rav Kahana, when we're buying the Rav Kahana, Iboilun, we ask the following question. Li Rav Shimon, Ti Oimer Umeslo Shashravia. When it says that when it improved in the hands of the Gazlan, and the Gazlan was really kind, we say that he's like on some level kind of like a sharecropper in that he'll be able to get part of it, of the improvements. So who does Shakil Gazlan? We say that the Gazlan is able to take this because ki misalkin lay b'demei misalkin lay. When we remove him, is it with money that we remove him? That you can just basically pay it off with money, or dilma mibsar shakel, or do you actually have to pay with the meat itself? So when he has to reimburse, does he end up giving because it's being split? It's almost like you're a shutuf. So do you have to pay the value of to the nigzel, that half, if you will, or is it you actually have to give them from the meat itself? So upashdan maha. Well, we answered it from the following: Yom Rav Nachman and Shmuel. Shloish shomin lehen hashevach. There are three situations in which we evaluate improvements. Umalin oisim adamim, but only in monetary value. Ve'elahin bechor leposhit ubal chavu lekech ubal chayv yisoimim. And thank goodness for Rashi. What is going on over here? So what is a bechor leposhit? Says Rashi. Let's say you have property which belongs to a father, and the property goes up in value, or all their estate. Now the father died, but it wasn't yet divided. But in the interim, the value went up. At the time of the value of when they split it up, and he wants to get his double portion because he's the firstborn son. Sarach laxer lifsh leposhit revia hashvach shel chelak b'chayra b'mois she'ein lo litol pishnayim b'ma sheshbiach zeh. So the bechor actually has to give back a quarter because we say that he does not profit in its shvach. The fact that it went up after the father died, before the chalukah, the bechor is not able to get pishnayim from that. V'im hishpiach b'yud be'zuz. So, for example, let's say it went up by 12 zuz. Kishenotol zeh pishnayim bekarka. When he takes double portion, and there's two children, so if there's 12, it would be 8 and 4. Noitel min hashvach ches zuzim. So he took the 8 because if there's 12, so the bechor gets 8 and the pasha gets 4. He actually has to give back 2, so it's split 6-6 because he's not able to collect in that situation. He has to give back 2 in money. It doesn't give land back. He can give back the money. So the pashit doesn't have the right to say, I want you to give me back land for this value. No. When it comes to a bechor, he has the ability to give back the shvach, but only in monetary value. It doesn't have to actually give back the land. Okay, that's number one. And then the Gemara says, "Bal chayiv to l'keach." What is that? Says Rashi, "Bal chayiv hatarv l'kuchais b'shil chayiv sheyesh lo al hamoicher." So you have a malva, you have a lender who lent $100,000 to a loiva. He doesn't pay back. Now the loiva sold land, so this is encumbered properties. There's a lien on this land, and therefore the malva has a right, who's the bal chayiv, is able to go to the lekech and to be able to make a claim. Now in this situation, ein lekech b'mashishbiach lekech. Now let's say the lekech, in the meantime, this buyer made improvements, or the land improved. So he's not allowed masalko bal chayiv b'domim v'noislo demei shvachai v'noislo karka b'shir shvachai. So also the bal chayiv does get his, what I say, $100,000, but he's not going to necessarily get the land. This is something in which he will only have to give the improvements in monetary value. So just like the Yerusha, it went up, so you only have to pay back the 2 zuzim in money and not in land. So too, when it comes to the bal chayiv, to the lekech who made improvements does not have to give that improvement to the bal chayiv in land, but only even in monetary value. And then finally, bal chayiv li'yisayimim. So what is that? It's the same thing, that yisayimim, we make the same din, that when it comes to yasum, if there's improvements, the orphans do not have to give back land that of the improvements, but rather it's monetary value. Okay, so that is that. Okay, and I'm not sure if this is what Rashi's saying. Ubet shin li'yisayimim. I'm not sure it should maybe say ubal chayiv li'yisayimim. Okay, maybe I'm not seeing this correctly. Bal chayiv shi'or l'nichsi yisayimim b'shvil chayiv aviyim. So he wants to collect a loan from their father. So the yasam, it was their father that owed money. Ein lo b'mash yishbichu nechasim la'achar misas aviyim klum. So he doesn't get anything. U'malhum shvachim adamim v'noisin moisim yirtza. Okay, so again, he doesn't give back land. So Amalei Ravina Ravashi. So what exactly are we saying over here? So the question is, do we say that when it comes to this case of a Gazlan, does he have to give back? Could he just be Masal B'damim? Or do we say even when he has to actually give like the object itself, like the land itself, the meat itself? So we see over here that again there's 3 situations where that takes place. And this is what, let's look at question 14. Also TA23. Elu shloish shomen lehem hashavach umalon oisim bedomim b'chor pashid b'chav lokech b'chav yisayimim. Sounds a lot easier than the B or the explanation. TA23 asks the exact same question, and let's see if he writes it any differently. B'chor pashid b'chav lokech b'chav yisayimim. Okay, so that's TA23. So it's in those 3 situations. So Amalei Ravina Ravashi, so is that true that he holds that a bal chayiv to a lekeach, that he has to give back the improvements at all? So you're saying that he has to give the improvements in money, but he doesn't have to give it in land. When it says over here that the bal chayiv, it says collects the shvach. So, right, how could Shmuel say Bal Chayiv L'Lokeach Yoiv Le'Shvach, but it says Bal Chayiv Goivus Shvach? So if you look in Rashi, Goivus Shvach Ve'enu Makser L'Lokeach Klum, doesn't have to give back anything to the buyer. Jamalei Lo Kasha Kan B'Shvach Hamagil L'Ksafim Kan B'Shvach Shemagil L'Ksafim L'Ksefayim. I'm not sure if this is the right way to pronounce it. So if it's shvach she'en megil stuff which didn't reach the shoulders, says Rashi could go in tavua, like grain. Shegadol kol tzarch, it's completely grown. Nois l'lekeach l'dameha. So you have to give to the lekeach its value. So you still need. So in that situation, if it's ein megil ksafim, That's if it's Megillah Ksafim. If it's in Megillah Ksafim, it still needs the land. It hasn't grown completely. So therefore it is like the land. So it has the same din as the land if it's She'ein Megillah Ksafim. But if it's Megillah Ksafim, so then that situation, you just have to give the value because it's already not connected or doesn't need the land. So it's posh. If it needs the land, it's like the din of the land. However, if it's already grown completely, then it doesn't need the land anymore. Therefore, you can just give its value. So that's the answer. So we know in all situations and stories that he would collect even when it came to grains which were completely finished that do not need the land, and he would collect without compensating him. So lo kasha, as we continue to Sadi Vav Amid Aleph, hadamasik be kashir ara ushvacha, hadamasik be el kashir ara. So, as in the event where it was the amount of the land and its improvements, as this was all owed to him, so he takes it all. However, if it's only the shear of ara, then not. If the lekech has money, then you can't go to the Baal Chayiv shopper. If the buyer does have money, he can pay off the Baal Chayiv. Let the lekech say, if I did have money, I would be able to pay you off completely. So give me a portion of land, shir shavchoi, the value of its improvements. So he said no. He still can't say that taina. Because this was actually an apotiki, that I only wish to collect from this. So when you make it into a apoteki, so in that situation, so the actual loan is anticipated to be compensated dafka from that thing. And therefore, if you said that this is an apoteki, so therefore the lekech would not be able to make this type of a taina. Okay. And therefore, the lekech cannot say, if I had money, I could have paid you, so therefore give me a portion of land, okay, of the shvach. Okay. We're going to stop there. Not an easy piece, but I think we kind of went through it a little bit. Let's see if we have a question here. Okay. TA 23 we did. TB 25. Guzzle Lulav. Okay. Some sukkah next stop coming up. Let's look at some of Rabbi Gibber's questions. And some of them are actually from yesterday's daf. So let's go through a few of them. Mahim habez tanoyim. Bechi hagav nechayavin hayorshim l'achseres haribis shigav aviyim. When would you still have to give back the ribis that your father collected? So one is the object he stole is identified. It's mesuyim. So for kavod avihem, and the father did tshuva before his death. 2. Katani bebraisa shagaboyim amuchsim. All these different people, royim, shepherds, are all form of stealing. Kishos and tshuva, when they do tshuva, maksirin lamakirin, they should give back to the people that they know they stole from. Those that they don't, they should do sarchet sibor. They should make wells. Ivelo b'yamei Rabbi tikna de'en mekablin min haganavim. So I thought you don't collect from them. So either one is before the takana. So here you give sarchet sibor. In our case, where your potter is after the takana, or really both cases are after the takana, but you're still chayav to return if the object you mamish stole is still by you. If you only have money, you're potter with the takana. Next question is where our daf started. Today's daf. Ketani bebraisa. Durameir hagoizo rachel v'gozla. You stole a sheep and sheared it. O para v'yolda, and it gave birth. Misham oisa v'eskiso seha. So you have to basically give everything back. Osavis vlada vadeha mahin beis haiboyis the boy one to leave the Rameir. So what were the two questions about Rameir? Does he hold shini makam oimed? This is why you return to him everything, or does he hold a shinui? It is a shinui, but only here we give him a kanas. Really, shinui is kaina, and here only a kanas. But do we only kanas only b'mezid, but not b'shaygeg or even b'shaygeg? Okay. B'braisa hanal kaimer bihuda gazela chayzeres beineha. Shimon kaimer roino sekihu shuma etzlo b'kesav my binayu. According to Rav Zvid, Rabbi Huda holds it goes to the Baal, or the Nigzel. Rav Shimon says the Goslin gets it. The wool is on the animal, the fetus still is in the womb. According to Rav Papa, everyone holds the Goslin gets it. The question is how much. Rabbi Huda holds the Goslin gets everything, and Rav Shimon holds he only gets half, a third, or a fourth, depending on his care of the animal in the Medina, depending on, I guess, what the law is. So again, if you have shvach she'ein megil ksafim, which, as we said, it's referring to something that still is not complete yet. It's not. There's no gemar avoda, which means it's still connected to the land. So he takes the shvach and doesn't give it back, not even money. So in that case, he's able to take the shvach, but not the money. Mahu adin le'inyan bal chayiv k'shegayves chayiv lo'ikech le'inyan shvach hamegil ksafim. How about when it comes to, which is basically, it's totally disconnected from the land, like tefua, right? So first we said he returns the money of the shvach. Then we said if the chayiv is worth the land and the shvach, if the chayiv is worth the land and the shvach, he keeps it. If it's only the land, he returns money for the shvach. And this clearly shows I knew the Gemara pretty well back then. Adkan.